My name is Valerie Carson and 23 years old. I dragged myself home through one of the longest, most exhausting shifts I'd had in weeks. My back ached, my legs felt like lead, and all I could think about was throwing myself onto my bed and letting the world fade away. I even imagined the quiet comfort of my apartment, the stillness, the silence, the way everything would be exactly as I left it. That's what I craved. But the moment I pushed my front door open, my body froze. Something was wrong. My living room wasn't how I had left it that morning. The couch cushions were out of place. A blanket was sprawled across the armrest like someone had been napping there, and on the coffee table sat a glass of milk half full, beads of condensation running down its side. I never poured that milk. My eyes darted around the room, trying to take in every detail. The faint hum of the television reached my ears, but I knew I had turned it off before leaving. For a split second, the air felt colder, heavier, like the entire apartment was holding its breath, waiting for me to realize what was happening. A chill ran up my spine. I lived alone. Nobody should have been there. Nobody had permission to be there. My heart began to hammer in my chest, each beat louder than the last, as a sickening thought crept in. Was someone in my house right now? Every instinct screamed at me to step back outside, to call for help, but my feet refused to move. Instead, I found myself standing perfectly still, listening, straining to catch the faintest sound beyond the walls of my living room. And that's when I knew I wasn't alone. I stood rooted to the spot, my body refusing to move even as my brain screamed at me to do something. My mind spun in every direction at once. Had someone broken in while I was at work? Was there a stranger in my home right now, waiting just a few feet away? 1,000 terrifying scenarios flashed through my head. What if they were armed? What if they were dangerous? I picture burglars rifling through my things, someone crouched in the shadows ready to pounce the second I got too close. Every instinct told me to turn around, walk right back out the door, and call the police. That would have been the smart thing to do. But for some reason, whether it was adrenaline, stubbornness, or pure disbelief, my curiosity shoved me forward. I had to know who was inside. I took a shaky step toward the hallway. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath me, and I froze, holding my breath, terrified that whoever was there might have heard. My pulse pounded so loud in my ears it drowned out the faint sound of the TV. But the closer I crept, the clearer that sound became. It wasn't just white noise, it was the steady murmur of voices, the rise and fall of dialogue from some show or movie. Someone was watching TV in my bedroom. My bedroom, my private space. Each step down the hall felt heavier than the last. My palms were slick with sweat, and my chest felt tight, like I was walking into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And as I reached the door, my greatest fear pressed down on me. Whatever was on the other side was real. My hand trembled as it wrapped round the doorknob. For a moment, I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself for whatever horror I was about to uncover. Then, with one quick motion, I pushed the door open, and what I saw nearly knocked the breath out of me. There, in the middle of my bed, nestled between my pillows like she had been living there for weeks, was my pregnant sister-in-law. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't surprised. In fact, she looked perfectly at ease, lounging with one hand propped under her head while the other scrolled lazily through her phone. For a split second, I thought I must be hallucinating from exhaustion. Maybe I had entered the wrong apartment. Maybe I was dreaming. But no, the framed photos on the wall were mine. The scent of my laundry detergent hung in the air, and the pile of unfolded clothes I had left on a chair that morning was still there. This was definitely my bedroom. So why was she here? She didn't even glance up when I stumbled into the doorway. She just kept scrolling, her face illuminated by the blue glow of the phone screen, like my intrusion was the inconvenience, not hers. The casualness of it all made my stomach churn. I blinked hard, trying to process the scene. This wasn't some burglar. This wasn't a stranger. This was family. But the question pounding in my mind was the same: why was she in my home without me knowing? My throat went dry, words stuck in my mouth. Nothing about this made sense. And yet, the longer I stood there, the clearer one thing became: this wasn't a mistake. She was here on purpose. My throat tightened as I forced the words out. What are you doing here? My voice cracked, shaky, like I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. She didn't even flinch. Without lifting her eyes from the glowing phone in her hands, she said it as casually as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Your dad said it was fine. He gave me the key. For a second, I just stood there, stunned into silence. My dad did this. I felt my jaw drop. But no sound came out. It was like my brain was short-circuiting, trying to piece together something that made no sense. That key, my emergency key, was never meant for this. It was supposed to be for real emergencies, like if I locked myself out, or if something happened to me and someone needed to check on the house. Not this. Not for someone to just waltz in, set up camp, and claim my space as if it were theirs. I glanced around the room again with fresh eyes. The open bags by the dresser, the water bottle on my nightstand that wasn't mine, the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air. She hadn't just stepped in for a quick visit, she had moved in. And the worst part, nobody asked me, nobody told me. My safe space, my quiet, private sanctuary had been invaded without so much as a phone call. My chest tightened with anger, confusion, and a creeping sense of betrayal. Why would my dad think this was okay? Why didn't my sister-in-law think she needed my permission? All I knew was that in that moment, everything inside me screamed this was only the beginning of a nightmare. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. My own dad, had used the emergency key he kept for my place. That key was never supposed to be about convenience. It was about safety. It was about trust. I gave it to him for peace of mind, in case something ever went wrong, if I lost my keys, if there was a fire, if I had some accident and couldn't get to the door. It was meant for real emergencies, not for him to play landlord in my absence. But here I was, standing in my bedroom doorway, realizing that instead of respecting those boundaries, my dad had crossed them in the worst way. He hadn't just unlocked my door, he had unlocked my life. And for what? So my pregnant sister-in-law could move in without me even knowing. I felt sick to my stomach. Betrayal isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's as simple as realizing the one person you trusted most with your privacy thought nothing of invading it. That key, the one that used to bring me comfort, now felt like a weapon that had been turned against me. The thought kept repeating in my head. He used it without asking. He didn't even tell me. I pictured him unlocking the door, carrying in her bags, walking through my living room like he owned the place. Did he hesitate? Did he feel even a shred of guilt as he rearranged my world behind my back? Or did he truly believe he had the right to do it? My home was supposed to be my sanctuary, the one place where I had total control. And in an instant, my dad had shattered that illusion. I couldn't shake the bitter realization. If the person I trusted most with my emergency key could use it against me, then what did that say about the boundaries in my family? For the first time in years, I didn't feel safe in my own home. It didn't take me long to piece things together. My sister-in-law hadn't just wandered into my house by accident. She was there because she had been fighting with my brother. Big fights, the kind that leave the whole house tense, the kind where one person decides they'd rather storm out than stay under the same roof for another night. From what little I'd heard, their arguments had been going on for weeks. Late night shouting matches, slammed doors, texts left unanswered. I guess finally, she had enough. Instead of working it out, instead of seeking her own family's support, she decided to leave. And my dad, always the fixer, always the one who thinks he knows best, stepped in. But instead of suggesting she stay with her parents, or even with a friend, he chose me, my quiet little home, my private space, suddenly became the perfect solution to her problem. It wasn't my brother's responsibility to house her. It wasn't her family's responsibility to take her in. No, apparently I was the convenient option. I could almost imagine the conversation. My dad, in that matter-of-fact voice of his, saying, "She can stay at your place. You've got room. You live alone. It'll be fine." Like I was nothing more than a backup plan. Like my life didn't factor into the equation at all. And maybe to him it was just that simple. She needed shelter. I had shelter. Problem solved. But to me, it wasn't just about space. It was about respect, about the fact that my dad made a decision that flipped my life upside down without so much as a phone call to warn me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It wasn't just my sister-in-law intruding. It was my dad's assumption that my boundaries didn't matter, that my comfort was less important than keeping the family peace. And as I stood there, watching her scroll on her phone like she had every right to be in my bedroom, the truth settled heavy in my chest. To them, my home wasn't really mine. It was just an extra room waiting to be filled. The longer I stood there, the clearer it became. This wasn't some quick overnight stay. This wasn't her showing up with a single bag, planning to crash on the couch until things blew over. No, this was deliberate. This was organized. This was a move. And by the front door, stacked in a neat little pile, were multiple bags of clothes. Not just one duffel, but full-on suitcases. Like she had packed for a long trip. My hallway, which usually felt open and uncluttered, suddenly looked like the luggage claim at an airport. Then I wandered into the bathroom, and my stomach sank. Her toiletries weren't just placed there temporarily, they were set up. Toothbrush in the holder, shampoo and conditioner on the shower shelf. Her lotions and creams lined up right next to mine like they belonged there. The small bathroom that had once been my private retreat was now a shared space without my permission. The more I looked, the worse it got. A water bottle on my nightstand that I didn't put there. A sweater drape over the back of my dining chair. Even the fridge had been touched. My groceries shifted around to make space for hers. And then came the kicker, the moment that made my blood boil. She casually referred to my guest room as her room. Not the room I'm using, not the guest room, no, her room. As if I'd been downgraded to some kind of roommate in my own house. Each discovery felt like another line being crossed. It wasn't just physical objects, it was the principle. Every new item I found was another reminder that my life, my home, my comfort had been rearranged without my say. What stung the most wasn't the mess or even the invasion of space, it was the arrogance of it all. She hadn't asked. She hadn't even tried to soften the blow. She acted like it was normal, like it was expected that my house would become her safe haven. And the more I realized how settled she already was, the heavier the dread became in my chest. This wasn't temporary. She wasn't planning to leave anytime soon. Fuming, I grabbed my phone and dialed my dad's number with shaking hands. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. My frustration boiled over the second he picked up. "Dad, what on earth is going on? Why is she in my house? Why did you use the emergency key without telling me?" I expected him to sound guilty, maybe apologetic, maybe even sheepish. But instead, his tone was calm. "To calm, she's family," he said firmly, like that phrase alone was supposed to explain everything. I blinked in disbelief. "Family, Dad? That doesn't mean you get to move her into my house without asking me." He sighed, the kind of sigh that told me he thought I was being unreasonable. "She's pregnant," he said, his voice laced with finality. "She needs a safe place. And right now, you're the best option. You're single. You've got extra space, and she shouldn't be under stress. Stop making a big deal out of nothing." I nearly dropped the phone. Was he serious? Did he really think my home, my life was something he could rearrange without even consulting me? "I don't care if I have space," I snapped, my voice rising. "This isn't about space, Dad. This is about respect. This is about boundaries. My home is my sanctuary. You don't get to decide who lives here. Not you, not her, no one but me. But instead of hearing me, he doubled down. You're being selfish. She's carrying your niece or nephew. You should be honored to help her. Families step up for each other. His words cut deep, twisting guilt into my chest. But underneath, the guilt was pure anger. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't cold-hearted. I was simply asking for the basic courtesy of being asked before my privacy was invaded. In that moment, the betrayal burned even brighter. It wasn't just my sister-in-law overstepping, it was my dad dismissing me, brushing off my feelings like they didn't matter. And the worst part, he made me feel like I was the villain for daring to speak up in my own home. At first, I told myself to stay calm. After all, she was pregnant. That fact alone weighed on me every time I opened my mouth to speak. The last thing I wanted was to cause her stress or make myself look like the heartless relative who couldn't handle a little inconvenience. So I bit my tongue. I tried to convince myself it was temporary. Maybe she just needed a few days to cool off from her fight with my brother. Maybe a week at most. Surely my dad wouldn't let this drag on forever. So I adjusted. I gave up little pieces of my space without making a fuss. She wanted the bigger bed, fine. She wanted to nap in the living room with the TV blaring. Fine, I told myself it wasn't worth starting an argument. I'd just retreat to my room, put in my headphones, and wait it out. Every time I noticed her leaving cups in random spots or tossing her shoes in the middle of the hallway, I smiled through clenched teeth. Every time she left lights on all over the house or rummaged through my fridge like it was hers, I told myself, don't say anything, she's pregnant, be patient, but beneath the fake calm, frustration simmered. I could feel my patience thinning with every small irritation. My home, the one place where I used to unwind and recharge, wasn't peaceful anymore. It was chaotic, loud, and filled with energy that wasn't mine. The worst part, she acted so comfortable. Like this was all perfectly normal. Like I had simply signed up to host her indefinitely. And because I didn't say anything, because I kept playing the polite host, she only settled in deeper. I kept waiting for her to say, thank you, I'll be gone soon. But those words never came. Instead, each day stretched longer, and my tolerance inched closer to breaking. Within days, my patience wasn't just thin, it was cracking. Slowly but surely, my home stopped feeling like mine. At first, it was just small things: an extra plate in the sink, a blanket left on the couch, a pair of shoes by the door. But within a week, it was like a tornado had moved and set up permanent residence. Dishes piled high in the sink, crusted over because she never bothered to rinse them. Food wrappers and empty glasses cluttered the counter, as if the trash can was invisible to her. The couch, my favorite place to unwind after work, was covered in crumbs. Pillows tossed everywhere like it was a public lounge. But it didn't stop there. My expensive skincare product stuff I carefully budgeted for started disappearing from the bathroom. One by one, bottles and jars that I had barely used were showing up half empty. When I asked her about it, she just laughed and said, "Oh, I didn't think you'd mind. You can always buy more, right?" That comment stung. Because yes, technically I could buy more. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I worked hard for those things. I bought them for me, not for someone who waltzed into my house without asking. Everywhere I looked, I found reminders that this was no longer my sanctuary. She spread out like the place was hers. Her bags spilled into the hallway. Her snacks dominated the pantry, and her laundry piled up in the corner of the living room. It was suffocating. And the worst part, I started to feel like a stranger in my own space. I was tiptoeing around her mess, avoiding the living room, avoiding the kitchen, and locking my bedroom door just to keep a sliver of privacy. It was like I'd been downgraded to a guest in my own home while she lived like the permanent resident. And Then came the kicker, the one thing that made my blood boil more than the dirty dishes, the crumbs, or even my stolen skincare. She started inviting people over, not family, not mutual friends, her friends, complete strangers to me. And she didn't even have the courtesy to ask first. Asterisk the first time. I came home late from work, hoping for peace and quiet. Instead, I opened the door to the sound of booming, laughter and chatter echoing down the hallway. I stepped into my living room and froze. 3 people I had never seen in my life were sprawled across my couch, shoes kicked off, snacks scattered on the table. One of them even had their muddy sneakers propped on my rug, the one I spent weeks saving up for. Asterisk my sister-in-law waved lazily from the kitchen like nothing was wrong. Hey, hope you don't mind, I had a couple friends over. Asterisk a couple. There were 5. And they were treating my house like a college dorm. Asterisk by the time they finally left, the living room looked like a tornado had passed through. Empty soda cans on the floor, greasy fingerprints on the coffee table, crumbs ground into the carpet, and it was left to clean it up. Not her friends, me. Asterisk I told myself it was just a what-I'm thing, but it wasn't. Soon, it became a pattern. Weeknights, weekends, random afternoons, people I didn't know were coming in and out of my home like it was a revolving door. My safe, private sanctuary had turned into a hangout spot. Asterisk the invasion of privacy was bad enough, but what really cut deep was the blatant disrespect. She didn't ask, she didn't thank me, she didn't even acknowledge that she was crossing a line. Asterisk it was my home, but somehow, I was starting to feel like the intruder. Asterisk finally, I reached my breaking point. After yet another night of cleaning up after my sister-in-law's friends, I sat on my bed, phone in hand, debating whether to call my dad. Part of me hoped he'd finally see things from my side. Surely, if I explained how out of control everything had become, he would understand. Asterisk so I called. I laid it all out, the dirty dishes, the late night guests, the disrespect, the way I no longer felt like my home was my own. My voice shook with frustration. But deep down, I was hoping for comfort. I was hoping my dad would say, "You're right. This isn't fair to you. I'll talk to her." Asterisk. But that's not what happened. Asterisk instead. He cut me off mid-rant. His tone was sharp, cold, and final. Asterisk stop being selfish. He barked. This isn't just about you. She's carrying your niece or nephew. She needs peace. She needs comfort. And you should be honored to help. Asterisk the words landed like knives. Honored? Did he really think I should feel grateful for being pushed out of my own space? Did he really believe that my boundaries, my comfort, my life didn't matter because I wasn't the one pregnant? Asterisk I opened my mouth to argue, but the lump in my throat made it hard to speak. I realized then that he wasn't going to listen. In his eyes, I was the villain, the selfish one. Asterisk I hung up the phone, my hands trembling with anger and hurt. My own father, the man who was supposed to protect me and respect me, had dismissed everything I was feeling with a single sentence. Asterisk I didn't feel honored. I didn't feel appreciated. I felt trapped in a nightmare that nobody seemed to care about. Not my dad, not my brother, not even the woman who had taken over my home. Asterisk, and that's when I realized if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. It happened on a Tuesday night. I had dragged myself home after a long day at work, already running on fumes. All I wanted was to reheat the meal I had prepped on Sunday, my one attempt to stay organized and keep myself sane in the middle of all this chaos. But when I opened the fridge, my heart sank. The neatly stacked containers of food I'd spent hours preparing, gone, completely gone. My pantry shelves looked raided. Snack wrappers tossed carelessly on the counter, and there she was standing barefoot in the kitchen, casually munching on the very last slice of pizza I'd been saving for myself. She didn't even look guilty. In fact, she gave me this blank, almost bored expression, like of course everything in this house belonged to her now. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about food, it was about respect, about control, about my entire life being hijacked without permission. I set my bag down and took a deep breath. "We need to talk," I said firmly. Trying to keep my voice steady, she looked up and eyed, as if I had interrupted her little midnight feast. "No," I continued, "this isn't working. You can't just stay here without my permission. I never agreed to this. And honestly, I need my space back. This is my home, not yours, and I can't live like this anymore." Her reaction. You'd think I had just slapped her across the face. Her jaw dropped, eyes wide, hands instinctively resting on her belly like I had physically threatened her. "Are you serious?" she gasped, her voice shaking. "Are you really trying to kick out a pregnant woman? Do you have any idea how heartless that sounds?" But I didn't back down. For once, I stood tall, staring her right in the eye. "This isn't about you being pregnant. This is about boundaries, and I won't let mine keep being trampled on." And just like that, the stage was set for a showdown I knew was coming. The moment the words left my mouth, she grabbed her phone like it was a weapon. No pause, no reflection, just straight to dialing my dad. Her eyes glistening with the perfect amount of crocodile tears. I stood frozen, watching her pace my living room with one hand dramatically cradling her belly and the other holding their phone to her ear. "Dad," she sniffled loudly, making sure I could hear every word. "She's trying to kick me out. I don't know where to go. I'm pregnant and she doesn't even care. She's being so cruel." Cruel? That word stung like a slap. Cruel? I had tolerated weeks of her mess, her guests, her disrespect. I had sacrificed my peace, my sanity, and even my own food. And yet, somehow, I was the villain in her little performance. Within minutes, my phone lit up. My dad. I didn't even have to answer to know what was coming. But against my better judgment, I picked up. The fury in his voice hit me like a thunderclap. "You're unbelievable," he barked before I could get a word in. "I raised you to put family first, not to turn your back on them. She's carrying your niece or nephew, and instead of helping her, you're throwing her out like garbage. Do you have any idea how selfish that is? Selfish, heartless, cruel." The words ricocheted in my head, each one sharper than the last. My dad, someone who was supposed to understand me, to support me, had chosen her side without hesitation. I tried to explain, to tell him this wasn't about her pregnancy, that this was about my home and my boundaries. But he didn't want to hear it. He kept repeating the same mantra. "She's family. She needs you. Stop being selfish." Meanwhile, my sister-in-law sat back on the couch, her face tilted just enough for me to see the smug little smile creeping across her lips. She knew she had won this round. My own father had become her shield. That was the moment something inside me hardened. If even my dad couldn't see how unfair this was, then I realized I was truly on my own. The call with my dad escalated faster than I ever imagined. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd cool down if I explained myself. I laid it out as calmly as I could. How she'd trashed my kitchen, invited strangers into my home, and treated my space like it was hers. But my dad didn't budge. His voice only grew sharper, slicing through my words like they were nothing. "Enough," he snapped. "You're not listening. She's pregnant. She's family. End of discussion." I could feel my chest tightening, heat rising to my face. "Dad," I tried again. "This isn't about me not caring, it's about respect. She moved in without asking. You gave her a key without asking. And now I'm the one paying the price." There was silence on the other end for a beat, and then his voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "If you throw her out," he said, "you'll regret it." Those words froze me in place. Regret it? What did that even mean? A threat? A warning? My own father, someone I had trusted with my spare key, someone who had always told me he had my back, was now standing against me. I swallowed hard, clutching the phone like it might shatter in my hand. Are you seriously threatening me over her?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he repeated himself. each word like a hammer driving nails into my chest. You will regret it. And then he hung up. The line went dead, leaving me in a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself was pressing down on me. I lowered the phone slowly, my mind spinning. I turned toward the couch. She was sitting there comfortably, one hand resting on her belly, the other scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. And that same smug smirk was back, the one that said, "I've got your dad on my side. What are you going to do now?" In that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just battling my sister-in-law anymore. I was battling my new family. And if I didn't stand my ground now, I might never get my home or my peace back. Something inside me broke that night. Not in a quiet, defeated way, but in a sharp, shattering snap that I couldn't ignore anymore. For weeks, I had been swallowing my frustration, tiptoeing around her moods, and letting my dad guilt trip me into silence. I had told myself to be patient because she was pregnant, because family comes first, because rocking the boat would only make things worse. But now, my father had just threatened me. My own home had been turned into a circus, and the woman sitting on my couch, the one eating my food, ruining my peace, and smirking at me like she had already won, was acting like she owned the place. I felt something in me harden. The fear, the guilt, the hesitation, they all burned away, leaving only anger and clarity. "This ends now," I whispered to myself. I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at her. My voice didn't shake this time. "You need to find somewhere else to stay tonight." Her head snapped up, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe I had dared to say out loud. Then her face twisted in outrage. "You can't just kick me out. I'm pregnant. Do you even hear yourself? You're a monster." Her words echoed in the room, sharp and venomous, but they didn't pierce me this time. I was past the point of guilt, past the point of caring what anyone thought. "I didn't invite you here," I said, my tone flat, final. "My dad didn't ask me. You walked into my home with his key, and you've been disrespecting me ever since. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to be kind. But this is my home, not yours." She sputtered, already reaching for her phone or again, no doubt to call my dad and sick him on me one more time. But I was ready. My father's threats no longer scared me. Because in that moment, I realized something powerful. I wasn't the villain here. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't selfish. I was simply demanding what was mine. And for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. The next morning, I opened my eyes with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time since this ordeal began, my chest wasn't heavy with guilt or obligation. Instead, a single word echoed in my mind: freedom. I had spent too long letting my home feel like it belonged to everyone but me. I tiptoed around in my own space, silenced by guilt, cornered by manipulation, and suffocated by obligations I never agreed to. But that morning, something inside me shifted. Enough was enough. Before heading to work, I picked up my phone and called a locksmith. The decision felt almost rebellious, like I was breaking some unspoken family rule. But wasn't this my home? Wasn't I the one paying the bills, cleaning the mess, and sacrificing my peace? If anyone had the right to decide who came and went, it was me. Watching the locksmith remove the old lock and install the new one was almost therapeutic. With every twist of his tools, I felt shackles I hadn't even realized I was wearing began to fall away. The click of the new lock sliding into place was more than a sound, it was a declaration. The best part, knowing my dad's so-called emergency key was now useless. No more unannounced visits. No more surprise guests. No more guilt wrapped in the disguise of family duty. As I left for work, the new keys jingled in my pocket, and I realized I had taken back more than just a door. I had taken back my boundaries, my voice, my right to say no. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my life was mine again. That evening, I walked up to my front door with my heart pounding like a drum. I had no idea what I was about to walk into. A part of me braced for chaos, for her sitting on my couch with that look of entitlement, or worse, my dad storming in to stage another guilt trip showdown. But when I opened the door, I was met with silence. The house felt different. The air wasn't heavy anymore. My eyes darted around, and slowly it hit me the bags were gone. The guest room that had been stuffed with her clothes and clutter was empty. My bathroom shelves, once crowded with her toiletries, looked like mine again. On the kitchen counter sat a folded note. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up in small, almost dismissive handwriting. It read, "Dad came to pick me up. Hope you're happy." I stared at the paper for a long moment. That was it. No apology. No thank you. Just a passive-aggressive jab left behind like a scar. It wasn't the closure I wanted, but it was enough. As the reality sank in, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. The weight pressing on my chest. The constant tension in my shoulders. It all began to lift. For the first time, my home felt like mine again. But the peace was short-lived once I glanced at my phone. Dozens of missed calls, a string of voicemails, each one angrier than the last. I pressed play on one, and my dad's voice erupted through the speaker, thick with fury. "You're selfish, you're ungrateful, heartless. She needed you, and you turn your back on her." The words cut deep. But as I stood in the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by the stillness I had fought for, something became clear. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt like I could finally breathe. That night, I sat alone on my couch, the quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. For the first time in weeks, there was no background noise of slammed doors, no footsteps that weren't mine, no strangers laughing in my living room, just silence. But with the silence came reflection. My mind replayed everything: the invasion of my privacy, the endless piles of dishes, the arguments that left me shaking, the guilt-tripping phone calls from my dad. I saw it all, scene by scene. And one truth stood out so sharply it almost hurt. I had let it happen. I had opened the door, not just physically, but emotionally. I had allowed my dad's voice to overpower my own. I had let guilt dictate my choices instead of reason. I had allowed someone else's chaos to seep into my sanctuary. And for what? To prove I was family first, to win approval that never came. Sitting there, I realized something I should have known all along. Loving my family doesn't mean destroying myself for them. Helping someone doesn't mean becoming their doormat. Support doesn't mean surrender. There's a line between kindness and being taken advantage of, and I had finally found it. It wasn't an easy lesson. Boundaries feel harsh when you've been conditioned to believe that saying no equals selfishness. But in reality, boundaries are the opposite of cruelty. They are survival. They're self-respect. They are the invisible walls that keep you standing when everyone else is pulling you in pieces. And once I saw that clearly, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just protecting my space. I was protecting my peace, my dignity, my sanity. I promised myself right then and there, never again, no matter who it is, family, friend, or stranger, I will never let anyone cross that line again. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time, my mind wasn't clouded with guilt or weighed down by family obligations. Instead, there was a single, undeniable thought: freedom. For too long, my home had stopped feeling like mine. It had turned into a crash pad, a battleground, a space where my voice didn't matter. But that morning, everything inside me screamed that it was time to reclaim what I had lost. Before heading to work, I finally did something I should have done long ago. I called a locksmith. The decision felt almost rebellious, as though I were breaking some unspoken family rule. My hands trembled when I dialed the number, but beneath that fear was determination. After all, wasn't this my home? Shouldn't I be the one who decided who came and who stayed? Watching the locksmith work was strangely emotional. Each twist of his tools, each click of metal shifting into place, felt symbolic. It wasn't just a lock being replaced, it was a piece of my life I was taking back. By the time the new lock slid into the door, I felt lighter, Like invisible chains I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying had finally snapped loose. And the best part, knowing my dad's so-called emergency key was now useless. No more unexpected visitors. No more manipulations disguised as family obligations. No more being backed into corners inside the one place that was supposed to keep me safe. When I walked out that morning, the new keys jingling in my pocket, I realized I had gained more than just a sense of security. I had reclaimed my boundaries. I had reclaimed my voice. I had reclaimed my right to say no even when others didn't like it. It wasn't just about protecting my home. It was about protecting myself. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was truly in control.